proceedings. As we now approach technical session number 4, which is our final one for today, and we have a theme as is displayed on the screen as well.
Yes, it's data-driven strategies and Sri Lanka's path to global competitive advantage. Interesting that this was mentioned by the Honorable Prime Minister as well in terms of analytics being a national asset and something we can use to develop.
So yes, so we have, as we did in the previous session, we have introduction of the chairman or introduction by the chairman, and we introduce the chairman by name, and then we will introduce the panel and the keynote speaker by name, and then hand over the proceedings to the moderator who will take it through. But first of all, let's focus on our chairman, who is Nishan Mendes, an alumnus of the Peradeniya University, and is a partner, technology and transformation leader, CIO and member of the leadership team and ex-co of Deloitte, Sri Lanka and Maldives. Previously, he's had a 17-year period with PricewaterhouseCoopers Sri Lanka, where he held multiple key positions, has been associated with SLASCOM for years, and then Nishan is the co-chair of the Technology Industry Development Advisory Committee, established by the Ministry of Digital Economy, and also is a member of the Task Force on Digital Transformation of Education, appointed by the Prime Minister last year. Our moderator then. Oh, okay, you're going to introduce our keynote speaker.
I was going in chronological order because the keynote will follow. And that's Dr. Ravi Edarisinghe, who will be delivering that address. He's a distinguished business leader with over 30 years of executive experience across multinational, Fortune 500, manufacturing, logistics, shipping, and diversified business sectors. He has held numerous CEO and senior leadership positions, specializing in business turnarounds, strategic planning, change management, and organizational transformation. He's currently serving as the Group CEO of GAC Group Sri Lanka.
Right, and so to the moderator, who's Yasit Fernando, Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Dialogue Finance, the fintech arm of that group, the career spanning financial services, telecommunications, retail, FMCG, and manufacturing. Previously served the Cargill's Group data and analytics functions, where he spearheaded cross-sector data strategies. That fits in very well with what we are talking about in this session. So Yasit has a master's in business analytics and big data from the IE Business School in Madrid, and, as it says, is a passionate advocate of analytics and AI.
On to our panelists now. First is Dr. Radhika Abeyvira, who is a data scientist with 15 plus years of experience in analytics, causal inference, experimental design, and survey research. She's currently a principal data scientist at Octave, the Data and Advanced Analytics Center of Excellence for the John Keells Group. She's an alumna of the University of Colombo and holds a master's and a PhD from the University of Southern California, Los Angeles.
Yes, then we also have Mr. Hasitha Ganguravila, is that right? Or is that
yes.
Yes, okay. Manager Business Analytics with Brandix. And we also need to introduce Deshan Vithana, and you need to do that.
Sure, I will do. He's an alumnus of the Faculty of Engineering at the University of Moratuwa, and he brings a powerful blend of technical rigor and strategic vision to the field of data science and analytics. As lead data evangelist at Mars Holdings, he leads data-driven transformation across the organization.
And if I understood matters correctly, because there has been an adjustment, I think Kaushika comes back on this panel. Is that correct? I am right. Okay, so we've already introduced Kaushika. That's fine. So that's our lot of introductions done. Yep. Okay, I think we are ready to go. So I'm going to hand over proceedings to our moderator, but we'll start off with Dr. Edrisingam, who will be speaking as chairman, yeah? Oh, that's a keynote, sorry. I'm getting confused, but that's okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to all of you. And firstly, my sincere appreciation to Professor Vatavala and CMA Sri Lanka for the invitation to be part of this amazing conference. So we just concluded a very interesting session on a discussion on AI, and now we are moving to data, which is the fundamental, the foundation for AI. Ladies and gentlemen, over the past few years, we all are aware that our nation has experienced one of the most challenging periods in its modern history. The broader theme of today's conference. Yet, through resilience, difficult reforms, and collective effort, we have begun the journey towards stability. But now, the question before us is not merely, how do we recover and grow, not merely recover and grow, but the real question is how do we grow differently? How do we ensure that Sri Lanka is not simply rebuilding yesterday's economy, but creating a stronger, smarter, and a more competitive one for tomorrow? Traditionally, countries have competed and are competing on natural resources, abundant labor, market size, access to capital. However, Sri Lanka faces limitations in each of these areas. We cannot compete with countries who have a population 10 times or 20 times our size. But there is one asset where size matters far less than strategy, and that is data. In the ancient times, nations built their prosperity. In fact, our nation built our prosperity on strategic assets such as lakes and irrigation systems, and later assets such as ports, roads, energy infrastructure. But today, a new national asset has emerged, which is data. If you look at countries such as Estonia and India, they have leveraged data and digital infrastructure to transform their economies. And mind you, if digital public infrastructure is the engine, we know that data is the fuel. One without the other cannot drive a digital economy. While the context of these countries differ from Sri Lanka's, they demonstrate an important lesson for us. Competitive advantage is increasingly determined not by the size of a nation, but by how effectively it uses data to make better decisions, deliver better services, and create new economic opportunities. What is encouraging is that Sri Lanka is not starting from zero. Over the past several years, we have laid important foundations, from the Personal Data Protection Act to the Digital ID initiatives, cloud infrastructure, establishment of GovTech, and the Digital Sri Lanka 2030 vision. Collectively, they represent the building blocks of a connected digital economy. So how do we move from these digital foundations to economic value? In tourism, data can enable personalized visit experiences, smart destination management, and more targeted promotional strategies. In export agriculture, data can help improve yields, optimize supply chains, and strengthen food security. In apparel, advanced analytics and AI can drive productivity. We all know that, improve forecasting, and help Sri Lanka compete on value rather than on cost alone. And in financial services, data is already transforming fraud detection, credit assessments, and financial inclusion. But technology alone will not create competitive advantage. Organizations themselves must do certain things to unlock the value of data because work is changing, workforce is changing, and we all know now the workplace is also changing. Organizations need new skills and capabilities, new ways of working, and the leadership has to be prepared to make cultural changes. And this is where management accountants have an increasingly important role to play. The, the objective is better decisions, better allocation of resources, and enhancing productivity and competitiveness. Management, accounting, and analytics now go hand in hand with a shared purpose. How do we use information to make better decisions that drive better outcomes? So finally, this leaves us with a number of strategic questions for everyone in this room. How do we transform data into a national asset? Who should be accountable for the data that is gathered and utilized? Do organizations genuinely want decisions to be driven by evidence rather than hierarchy or intuition? I repeat, do organizations genuinely want to make decisions driven by evidence rather than hierarchy or intuition? Are organizations prepared to invest in their data journey? Are we equipping our workforce with the knowledge and skills needed to effectively leverage data? And should management accountants become the translators between technology teams and business leaders? Now, these are actually not technology questions. These are economic questions and leadership questions, and questions that will influence Sri Lanka's competitiveness for decades to come. And I'm sure today's discussion will provide valuable insights into how Sri Lanka can transform data into one of its greatest strategic advantages. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, it is now my pleasure to invite our keynote speaker, Dr. Ravi Edirisinghe, to take us through his keynote. Thank you, and over to you, Dr. Edirisinghe.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Professor Watawala, for inviting me to speak at this conference. Generally, the last session of the conference is a bit of a deadly session. This is where people start slowly scooting off to either to pick their children from school practices or to catch a train or to catch their office transport. So it's a bit of a tricky session, but I'll try to do my best to keep your interests alive, who's left in the session. Right, okay, so the topic is about data as a national asset. To talk about data as a national asset, let's try to understand what data is all about. So data is the process, or data analytics is the process of shifting the raw data into its decision-making form. Raw data could be like clay, whereas its decision-making form could be the pottery in the whole process. And without analytics, data is nothing. It's like the crude oil. Without refining crude oil, is useless. So the analytics process has become so developed and the data capturing has become so wide. For a year, now we generate about 120 to 140 zettabytes of data. I know this figure wouldn't hit you when I say a zettabyte. Zettabyte doesn't create any interest in you. But these 120 zettabytes we generate for a year, if we convert into 32 GB pen drives like this, which you generally keep it in your handbag or in the pocket, you could create a distance of 27 million kilometers of simple handheld data drives. So that is 60 times to moon and back. So that's the amount of data we generate for a year. So which then creates a problem of what are we going to do with this data and how are we going to analyze it. And only 1% of the data can be analyzed. 99% of the data is not analyzed. So this is the challenge we face, not as a nation, but as a globe. And the other issue of data and its analytics is that the data today comes in variety of different forms. It could come in pictures, videos, CCTVs, smart devices, conversations. So the data has lost its traditional definition of the ones and the zeros and the numbers and data beautifully sitting in a database. It's now in various different forms. So you need various different platforms to clean them. So from a national asset perspective, this new data and its importance is even challenging some of the theories you studied in the classrooms. If you take, for example, neoclassical growth theory, which is in your syllabus, which talks about three aspects for a country to prosper, which is labor, capital, and technology, which is more related to the industrial revolutions. But today, we see countries who doesn't have any of those, purely due to data and data analytics are prospering and going ahead of the other countries. So some of the traditional theories are being challenged with these new phenomena. And data is driving the intelligence of a country or a society. We have seen smaller countries like Singapore coming in with their intelligence strategies, which have gone past even mega countries like the United Kingdom or some other countries in the Europe. Sri Lanka is beautifully placed to capture some of these into its mechanism, because by nature Sri Lankans are well educated. Our literacy rates, our education levels are very high. So as a result, we also could follow a similar pattern. Today, the AI also follows and adds fuel into the data. So if data can do X, AI can really augment that value into 10 or 20 times the X. So data can actually transform a whole society, a whole nation. So it is truly a national asset. Data can drive politicians to make better decisions. Data can fuel productivity and GDP growth, especially in the SME sector, because the large organizations would have the data analytics anyway. It is the much smaller organizations who shy a bit when it comes to data analytics, because there's a misnorm or a misconcept that data analytics is very expensive and you need big tools to do so, which is not correct. So data can actually bring competitive advantage to SME sector. I will quote a few examples for it. And since most of y'all are engaged in the financial field, data can help you to take better decisions, especially to maximize on the ROIs. And I'm sure most of y'all are calculating NPVs, IRRs, ROIs, ROCEs in your day-to-day work. And have you ever thought a properly analyzed decision through AI and data could actually generate a much higher ROI or ROCE or NPV when you really calculate? So a few examples before we move into the business segment of the keynote. A few countries have shown by example that data can be used to its country's national advantage. If you take, for example, like a country like Estonia, if you have read about Estonia, if you haven't, I invite you to do so tonight. Google a little bit, ask your chat GP to give you more data about Estonia. Estonia has a concept called the digital ID, where every citizen in the country has a digital ID. And their promise is that no citizen anywhere will have to enter the same data twice. That means if you go to an insurance company, when you give your ID, your name, address, age, gender, so on and so forth, everything would be downloaded into the insurance company's platform. So you will only have to pick what you need to insure and sign off. Compare it with one of our insurance companies. If you want to go and get an insurance, you'll have to fill a long form. And then next you go to a sports club and want to get a membership in a sports club, you have to fill again the same form with all the details. But in Estonia, if you then go to a sports club and want to get the membership of the sports club, again when you give your ID, all your details can be downloaded by the sports club. So only you have to sign off. And then Estonian government has made all the databases belonging to the private sector interchangeable. So that means the hospitals can share data with the insurance companies can share data with the asset companies can share data with the police can share data with the inland revenue of the company. So the data is everywhere and connected and transparent. And they are one of the rarest countries where the voting system is completely online. There's no physical voting system available in Estonia. So we could imagine if these things happen to a country like either US or Singapore or Korea, but imagine a country like Estonia doing it. So read about this more and try to understand. A country which is neighboring us, which has a population of 1.4 billion people, is not so far behind. India also has created a digital ID for almost all of their population. And the fund transfers, the transactions, the form filling, dealing with the government, all have become digitalized now. So India is not so far behind of Estonia. So given the concept, Sri Lanka is somewhat behind. This is the right time. I'm sure our panelists will speak about it, for our country also as a nation to step forward, and our leaders in the private sector and in the public sector to shrug off their differences and come up with a national policy on data. Dubai as a country has an AI minister, whereas we have, as our country, ministers for traditional portfolios. Dubai has created a new ministerialship. They have a minister for data and AI. So these are some of the modern thinkings around the world where we can take learnings of. Since this is a conference which is participated by many in the private sector, I would like to talk a little bit about the private sector and how the private sector also can contribute to the economy to make data a national asset. Starting with the industry I come from, maritime industry, Sri Lanka, if you can see the diagram which I have posted here, is only 10 nautical miles away from the east-west shipping line. 60% of the world cargo is moved through this shipping line. 60% of the world energy, which is in either crude oil or refined oil, goes through this shipping route. And Gaul is only 10 nautical miles away. At any given year, 70,000 vessels move from east to west and west to east, passing Gaul. Only 9% come to our ports for services. 91% of the vessels just wave at us and pass by. If these vessel data can be analyzed, either by the public sector or by the private sector, we could identify various requirements for these vessels. I'm not talking about the 9% of the vessels which come into our ports, which we have the captive market anyways. But if we can identify the requirements of these 91% as a number, this is about 61,000 vessels every year. Identify what their bunkering requirements are, what their hull cleaning requirements are, what their crew change requirements are, what are their spare part requirements, fresh water, food, anything to do with the supplies. Gaul can be an OPL hub to serve these vessels. Sri Lankan economy can be contributed to by a significant value if the data of these vessels can be identified. For example, if a vessel sails from Singapore or Port Keeling, and if the data can be analyzed as to when is the next bunkering requirement or when is the next crew change requirement, these vessels can be approached in advance to provide these services. If not, we would again as a country would lose out to either Middle East or to the Cape of Good Hope for these services. So a thought-provoking industry where we can really make a difference to the national economy on data analytics. Few other industries we could think of as a nation how we can prosper. In the agriculture industry, I think our session chairman also touched upon it a bit as to how we can use data. I have a slide later, I will talk about it. The SME sector, especially in these areas like the healthcare, real estate, port and logistics, shipping, tourism, agriculture, and the small-scale financial services can use data as a strategic weapon. Now, this is the point I want to stress, that most of the SMEs are of the wrong opinion that data analytics is a very expensive affair, which is not. Even through simple Excel, you can do data analytics. For example, our Excel is fully loaded with forecasting models, affinity analysis, correlation analysis, product correlation analysis, and so on. So a simple hotel can identify all the products they are offering and run a correlation analysis to identify the affinities between different products. And then see when a customer checks into the hotel, quite apart from the room rate, what are other affinities this customer has. These kind of analytics are available in a simple Excel model if you know how to activate the data analytics model. 95% of the Sri Lankan workforce who use Excel doesn't know that there is a special feature which you can activate in your Microsoft Excel to do all these kind of analytics, and it is free of charge. Right? When I go and talk to my colleagues, most of these computers are not enabled with this feature. So go and Google tonight as to how you can enable data analysis feature in Microsoft Excel. And you will be amazed with the amount of features it has in your. So you don't need to invest millions of dollars or millions of rupees to do data analytics. You can start it with your simple laptop computer and the Excel at hand. A little bit about the tourism industry. If a hotel can invest in a little bit of data analytics tools, this time not Excel, but maybe slightly more advanced than Excel, either R or a VCA, which is also not going to cost a lot of money. They can identify the profile of a visitor along with its social profile. Very few hotels do this. Now, for example, with the data available in the social media today, you can identify and classify people as either nature lovers or the lovers of the show, animals, medical tourism, sports tourism, and so on. And then you can target these social groups with the hotel specialty you are in, and then make an appeal to them with special programs to visit the hotel. A lot of hotels in the Southern America are now doing this. Especially when there are football tournaments in the Southern America and the football tournaments in the Europe. As you know, in Europe, the football is quite active. So when Real Madrids and the Benficas and the German clubs are playing, the hotels, they trace through the social media who are the fans of these clubs. So when Bundesliga is played in Germany, they go and identify what are the key clubs playing the Bundesliga tournament and who are the social media followers of these clubs. Today, it could be easily identified through very simple tools. And then they make an appeal to these people and say, Real Madrid is playing Chelsea in Barcelona. Would you like to see the match? Who is making this invitation? A hotel is making this invitation. And probably this fan who had no intention of watching the match. And suddenly you would like to go see the match. And you contact the hotel, and the hotel does everything for you, including the game tickets. So it is like, if I make a more Sri Lankan example, it is like if you are a Chennai Super Kings fan, and if you have made so many social media comments about Chennai Super Kings, you get an email from a Chennai hotel saying Chennai Super Kings is playing Mumbai Indians in Chennai. Would you like to come and see the match? And if you say yes, your air tickets, your match tickets, your taxis, everything would be organized by the hotel. So instead of serving, they create a demand. A company called Amadeus in Europe has specialized in this kind of analytics, and they analyze this data and work closely with the hotels to create the demand. Sri Lankan hotels also can take a learning of this and move forward, not only serve the demand, but to create the demand. Especially when events are happening in and around Sri Lanka, we could take advantage of this and use social media to see who is interested in these events like this racing, sailing, swimming, rugby, etc. Another example which our session chairman touched upon could be in agriculture, how data and technology can be used in agriculture. Sri Lankan agriculture industry is one of the most primitive in the world, whereas our loss of production is close to about 30% at the farm and about another 20+% in transport and about another 10% of not meeting the demand. You might have a good harvest of melon, but there is no demand. So our farmers do not know how to speed up the agriculture to meet the demand. And when to store, when not to store, when to have the right produce, at what quantity. So if all these gaps can be connected through data, the demand and the supply can be matched, and the supply chain can be set up to make sure Sri Lankan agricultural industry thrive, to ensure that Sri Lankan GDP is aided with the Sri Lankan agricultural segment, which I think should be our duty as Sri Lankans. A couple of international examples before I stop and let our panel take over. Some of the true large-scale projects which data and analytics have helped certain companies to capture industries. So one example is this migraine buddy, which is introduced by a medical company called Healant. So what they do is they have collected over 50 million pieces of data from migraine patients. So if you have migraine, you can download this app and then share your data with this app. With utmost confidence and confidentiality, they will process your data, and they will tell you when your next migraine attack is going to be. Generally, migraine is not predictable. You will get it today, you might not get it tomorrow. But here, this app will tell you when you could get your next migraine attack, depending on the environmental conditions, the pollution, some of the stress levels, all that. They will tell you in 2 days' time you are going to get a migraine attack. And there's a small subscription if you want to get onto the premier level, and that's where this company is making money. A country which is not so far away from us, Singapore, how they use data and visualization into the process. This company called Property Guru, which is now the number one property brokerage company in Singapore and Malaysia. So they introduced a concept called Property Guru Lens. So what you do, the value addition here is the convenience. If you are looking for space for rent or to buy, you don't have to log into a website and look for space. All what you have to do is to get your mobile phone out of your pocket and just hold it against a building. And when you just hold it against the building, like what you can see in this photograph, it will quickly analyze the building and go through thousands of databases and tell you in that building what are the blocks available for rent or lease. If we try to capture it into a Sri Lankan example, if you go in front of the World Trade Center today and hold your mobile phone against the World Trade Center, it will tell you 29th floor has space, 38th floor has space, so on and so forth. If you go in front of Astoria and just hold your mobile phone in front of Astoria, it will tell you there is a penthouse available for sale, 17th floor, 2-room, bedroom apartment available for sale. So no more one will have to type and search. All what you have to do is just take your phone out and point it against a building. These are some of the amazing revolutions commercial companies have made to make data and analytics their USP. Again, what you have learned in your classrooms and maybe your training sessions, strategy could come in various value additions. But more novel thinking is how you can add data and analytics into the strategy and its process. So for me to conclude, I would like to drive an interesting point. Sri Lanka is faced with serious challenges. We all know our debt repayments are coming very soon, and we have to grow at the target rate as an economy to surmount these challenges of our debt payments. So we have thought about how to grow as a country, but my question is, as a nation, have we thought about how to use data analytics, and use that as an export revenue earning industry which could serve our GDP? Further, have we thought about how to use data in our traditional industries like the hospitality, like the apparels, and like the agriculture industry in our country? So leaving the thoughts with you, I'll close my keynote, and I'm sure our panel will add a much more valuable thoughts into this process. Thank you very much, and I'm honored to be here.
Hi, everyone. It's a final session for the day, but I hope the energy levels are still up. Personally, for me, it's a very interesting topic. Two words, data, analytics, and sometimes these are two words we hardly speak about in certain forums or in other discussions. We speak a lot about AI, of course, everyone speaks about AI, but data and analytics, I think these two words deserve a lot more discussion as well. And I think I'm glad to go after Dr. Ravi. I think a lot of the things I picked up from that keynote was a lot about simplicity. Now, the simple fact about the data analysis tool in Excel, if you really look at it, it can do optimization that you learn in certain deep mathematical techniques. It can do regression. There's so much it can do, and sometimes I feel we hardly use it. So moving on from that, and I think thank you for setting the tone, I think, on simplicity. And I want to take a very simple example before I throw some questions at my fellow panelists. I think we've all been through this simple example or narrative I'm going to build. Just take a scenario of a FMCG company. Let's say they're serving about 100,000 shops in the country. And we all have, we've all been to business review meetings. Look at a scenario where it's being chaired by the business head. And we've all been through a scenario where, we haven't hit our budgets. So first question is, business head asking the sales managers, what happened? And these are a few things I've heard in different discussions. One answer is, Sir Giyamasa Vessa. It rained a bit. But then the business head is going to ask, okay, the way I recall, it only rained maybe 1 or 2 days, and that also only probably in Southern and Colombo. Can you come and tell me what was the actual impact of rain on your sale? And can you then tell me, okay, the budget deficit, is it due to weather? And the answer that we've all heard, and I'm sure you have been through it, is, sir, data na. Yeah, so that's one scenario. Then the other scenario is, another example that comes up is, sorry, we had a scenario in one region, we didn't have a sales officer, he resigned. Again, the question is, can you quantify and say, look at his past sales and tell me, okay, that absence, did that create the deficit? Again, usually the answer is, no, we haven't done that analysis. We don't have the data. We haven't looked at it. Usually the first response is, we don't have the data. Not even say we haven't done the analysis, right? Then another scenario is maybe, again, it comes up in every discussion these days, the economic situation, you start blaming Iran, you start blaming reduction in consumer buying, and then saying, okay, shops are not buying. But then again, another question that comes up is, Okay, then can you tell me what segments of your shops, have you segmented your shops into different tiers? And then can you say, okay, which segments have reduced their buying so that we know, okay, certain segments might be affected, certain segments might not be affected. Maybe compared to market, those segments should be growing. Again, when those questions are coming up, typical answer is we don't have the data. Then what happens subsequently to that meeting is everyone starts running around looking for data that they've never looked at. A poor analyst somewhere, probably a very smart guy, starts going into source systems. If you're lucky in that organization, you might have a data platform, but then again, is the data curated well to do the analysis? Do you have the data dictionaries? So you go in that whole circle where you eventually maybe don't find the answers. The next business review happens. That month has been good. Sun has been out. Life is good. You hit the budgets. You don't really look at the numbers. Again, you don't address the data problems. I'm sure we've all been through this. But and even in an era where we're talking about AI, I think probably even this year you may have been or seen some of this. So one of my first questions is, data, data, data. Even in my narrative, data came up probably about 10 times. Dr. Radhika, first to you. So you work for a large foreign entity. You are here, based here. So you've worked a lot with data. You've worked with survey data. You've done your research in some of those areas. How can an organization get started on understanding the data requirements and moving somewhere? My personal experience is sometimes just never a perfect place. But how do you get started and build to a place where you become more data and analytically driven?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having me in this conference, and thanks for hanging out there. I know it's very long day for most of you who have been there from morning. So it's a great question. I think, so when we work with our clients, we have clients within John Keel's group as well as outside. I think the first question we ask is not about, the data they have. We actually ask, what are your biggest problems? Right? What are the burning problems that you're trying to understand, trying to solve at this moment? Because if the problem you're trying to solve or with the data that you think you need to solve with data is like the number 8 or number 9 of your priorities, it's probably not a good place to start. Because if you're trying to encourage your leadership or your co-workers that data analytics is something they need to invest in, it's always best to start with the top 3 problems that you have in the company. So once you have that clarity, or this is the biggest problem, then you work backwards. So I'll just use an example just to kind of solidify what I'm trying to say. So let's say you're a manufacturing company, right? You have manufacturing plants all over Sri Lanka. Let's say you have hundreds of manufacturing companies, and you have all sorts of issues with ROI, employee retention, customer retention, energy cost. So you might have, 5, 6 different things that you're trying to solve. And then you want to see if, whether you can start using data to answer some of these problems. So as a management accountant, you probably already know, or at least have a rough idea of how big of a challenge each problem is. And I would see, okay, what are the top 3 problems? Out of the ones I mentioned, maybe energy cost could be a big problem for your factories and manufacturing plants, and you need to figure out a way to reduce the energy cost. Right from there, you work backwards to see what kind of data would you need to answer that question. So just, I'm not expert in, plant maintenance or manufacturing, but the first thing that comes to my mind is you think about collecting data about that 100 or 200 manufacturing plants you have. What is the square footage? What kind of equipment do you have? How many employees do you have? What kind of products are they building? So that's what data collection means. And some of this data might be just sitting there, and all you have to do is maybe put it into one place. But first you have to start asking what the problem is and work backwards to collect the data. If you do it the other way, you collect all the data you have and then try to look for a problem, you're probably not going to be as successful as you could be if you had started with the problem statement as opposed to the data. That's what I would say.
Thanks, Dr. Radhika. So one is starting with your problem statement, then you iteratively build your data ecosystem. I want to go into sort of the intersection between data and technology. See, data can be even in a simple Excel form, it can be in your source system, but then again, when you improve the maturity of an organization, I think the conversation about the words that get thrown out. I'll put it out there: data platforms, data warehouses, lake houses, data lakes. These come up. So, Hasit, I'd like to get your thoughts on this. Um, Again, in the interest of the audience, and I'm sure we have, CFOs in the audience or head of finance, where sometimes you may have to also have to evaluate decisions in investing in a data platform, hiring a vendor to do data engineering. So, in simple terms, if you can explain, why do we need a data platform? What are the reasons to really look at a data platform versus, having your Excel files and or accessing the DB of a source system? Why do you need a data platform? What is a data platform? And how can we have a journey? Again, it's a large investment. So in a small way, how do you start small and then build to having a pretty decent modern data platform?
So thank you for the question and thank you for having me today. So let's say if I come up with a simple scenario, right? So since we talking about the data analytics and how we can showcase data, all the things. Let's say now if we are creating a report, output of the company, right? And we are sending it to finance, right? So it's very simple thing, right? Then what finance people telling, okay, see now numbers are not tallying with our report, right? And then again, if I going through with the same report, if I create the report again, then even my report can be changed because the process that I have taken, the duplicates that I have removed, maybe in the second time it can be changed, right? So that's why we need a data platform. In other terms, we are calling this as a single source of truth, right? What happens is that if we have a data platform, then even the operation team, in the finance team, from the HR team, all of them are accessing only one platform, only one report that we can use, right? Through that, what we can do is we can create measures, we can create KPIs, right? So everyone in the company has seen one picture. And then again, so what happened is that let's say in this month end, if I'm creating a report, and same effort I have to put in the next month end as well. Because there are so many duplications, so many data errors, so many spaces, so many special characters. Some are putting capital words, some are putting small words, something like that, that is happening, right? So if you are using a data platform, what we can do is we can automate those things, right? So we can remove spaces, right? The next time when you are using the report, what we can do is that we can eliminate that manual part, right? So this is the benefit of having a data platform is a one stage to play for the whole team, right? All the KPIs, all the thing can be kind of a governed in a part, right? And then the next thing is, let's say if you are going to start this one, right, in within your company or within your work area. So what you can do is there are 5 steps, right? First, you have to collect data. You have to collect what data that you are going to use. And then you have to store it, right? So you have to store those in the one place, and then you have to clean it, right? You have to clean, you have to remove the special characters, all the things, what are the unnecessary things, and then you can serve them. Serve them means then you can create dashboards, maybe reports, maybe Excel report based on that curated data. And then the main benefit is that then you can govern this, right? Let's say if you are creating a report with all the sales details, all the customer details, and you are sharing this report with all the people in the company. But sometimes you are sharing the sensitive data as well, right? But let's say if you are having a data platform, you can govern this. You can pick who are the people that need to see finance data. And let's say if you have multiple customers that engaging with your business, you can mention, okay, these people can only see customer A, and these people can only see customer B. So something like that, these steps that you can take, the key point is that if you're having a data platform, we call it one single source of truth. Beyond that, you can do so many things, right? And since Dr. Ravi mentioned about the Excel, right? So I will tell kind of a thing that you can do, right? If you are expert in Excel, or if you can find a person who is expert in Excel, what you can do is, let's say, pick one report, right? And try to store that report in a SharePoint, right? In Excel, there is an option called Power Query, right? What you can do is that you can directly call the data through Power Query, right? Then you can create a ETL process, right? If you search certain things in YouTube or Google, there are so many examples, right? So what you can do is that, let's say if this month, if you done this one, then next month what you have to do is you have to replace your next month report into that, and you have to just click on this refresh button. Once you hit that one, all the reports, all the steps that you are doing manually will be automated, right? Yeah.
So, thanks, Asit. I think few key points came up: curation, governance, reusability, and I think whilst it's going to be an investment, I think there will be a lot more downstream value that will get created. So from some of the tech or harder stuff, I want to move on to some of the soft elements. I think culture and skills. So Kaushik, if I may ask you on the culture aspect, what do you think a good data-driven organization, you work with entities in Australia, New Zealand, Southeast Asia as well, how does the culture look like? What are the key elements of a good data-driven entity, Kaushika?
I think I'll use the common characteristics I've seen in what I call data mature organizations, organizations that know what they have and know how to use what they have. But keep in mind still, you'll be surprised to hear this, 44% of Australian businesses still have exposure have public exposure of their sensitive data. 44%. Now they've done the numbers to figure out what their risk exposure is, and they're working towards mitigating that. Because they have government frameworks in place, 20 of them, that if something was to happen, here's your solutions. So that then sets in place a certain level of maturity that they need to follow. And that goes across two different sides. I'll break it as board and management. And from a board lens, if you look at culture, you need to set the tone at the top. If you are making a decision on strategy, if you are approving budget for any investment, you take a data-driven approach. At which point, the data answer stops working after a while. Because if they want their budget, and if they want their KPIs, and if they want their bonuses, they need to start playing the game. And so you start setting a culture of going to the data, asking for dashboards, asking to see if you're making an investment decision on a new product, what's the lifetime value of the customer? Can you tell me what that is? And show that to me in a dashboard, broken down by market segmentation. When you ask those questions, the data will start to magically appear. But you have to then, from an audit and risk standpoint, set the guardrails in place to enable them. So what's the data governance strategy? Do you have a data governance strategy? Who are your data custodians? Who owns this data? And if the answer is the IT department, that's the wrong answer. It has, if it's financial data, CFO is primarily responsible. If it's market data, the CMO or whoever who's running, the chief revenue officer is primarily responsible. You need to understand who your data custodians are and make sure they talk to each other as well. Because if they don't share their data with each other, you're back to square one. And then the board needs to take a continuous improvement mindset. The dashboard you get today, if it's the same dashboard you get next year, then nothing's improved. It has to be continuously improving. You need to also make sure that everyone's working on the same definition. Some companies have a data analytics team, some companies have a BI team, some companies have a chief data officer. Do you have a common idea across the business of what a BI team does? Because if you don't, how do you know who to go to get that information in the first place, right? If the BI team's only job is to spit out the report and not make any assessment on it, you've made that call. That's fine. But then now it's your responsibility to interpret the data, right? From a management lens, adoption. There's no point introducing a data platform. There's no point introducing dashboards if the business doesn't adopt it. I have seen so many businesses introduce very flashy Power BI dashboards. The business at the operational level does not use it. They export it to Excel and just keep doing what they used to do. The whole investment's wasted. So how do you promote a culture of innovation there? You need to promote change champions. The management needs to make sure that there are operational staff that are enabled to adopt these things. You give them a business problem, you give them the tools, the skills are no longer an issue because there's YouTube and there's AI. You combine the two, you can get any person getting the data analytics skills. You don't need to know what do you call it? Auto-regressive moving average. You don't need to know how to do that model. The AI will do that model for you. But you need to know what it means, and you need to know what data you need. But you give your staff the business problem, and you ask them to solve it, and you either remunerate them or you champion them in some way when they come up with a solution. And that way they are highlighted as change leaders. You use that then to promote adoption. It takes the other 3 staff members in the room who saw this guy or this girl get an award to then want to play in the same Power BI platform. Yeah, that's just an example. And you need to be clear in terms of management whether you build or you buy. You don't have to always build. You shouldn't always buy. And understanding what your company strategy is and playing to that makes a big difference culturally. Final point is, I think, in terms of a skill set, management accountants are the best place, in my opinion, when it comes to understanding new forms of data. And the best example I can give you is, we all spoke yesterday, we heard the Prime Minister talk about sustainability. There are 2 new standards that have come out, one on sustainability, one on climate. Every management accountant in the room is going to have to learn those 2 standards, which means every management accountant in the room needs to look at how do you interpret climate as a reporting disclosure and relate it back to the data that you have available. Where do you go for sustainability data? I need to figure out a way to cost electricity. Where do I find that information? In the actual electricity bill. Now you need to convert that electricity bill into an emissions factor map and then feed that into some kind of a dashboard. Now, if you're already doing the work as a management accountant, all you now need to do is learn the data analytics skills and you plug the gap. So I would say it's an opportunity for management accountants. But that comes with a certain culture of wanting to learn. And so that continuous growth mindset is important as well.
So Kaushik, I think from cultural elements to, I think, organizational key components, you touched on skills. And I think that is a very interesting point you landed on. Especially, I think, the business folks being able to learn something technical versus teaching someone technical to learn business. I think the form is easier is what we realize, especially with all AI tools that are out there for you to learn the technical stuff. So from that point, I want to move to you, Dehan. So you lead an analytics team. Would you like, I'd like you to share some thoughts with the audience about key skills that are needed, or what are the key roles that we need to have in an organization, key skills, and also how do you build that capability and the capacity within. And also, I think Kaushika touched a bit on build versus buy. So how do we build that capability, and what should we look from outside, and how do you groom internal team members?
I think in terms of analytical thinking and also connecting to data-driven culture as well, most of the Sri Lankan companies, when they hear the term, what they think is, okay, we need dashboards and different colors, different visualizations, and we need to display those. That's the usual sentiment most of the Sri Lankan companies coming up. So rather than focus on analytical thinking, they're directly going for the solutioning stage. But still, most of the time, if you are going for a meeting room, the final decision probably might come from the hierarchy, highest hierarchy person take the final call, or the loudest in the meeting room taking the final decision, which is not the right way to drive a data-driven decision-making culture. I had a manager, so when I was very new in MS, so I was very new and I didn't know most of the areas and the KPIs we monitor as well. And sometimes in my first year, I asked my manager, okay, how I want to do this and why this is happening. And manager's answer was, I don't know, shall we look at data? And then this happened like 3-4 months continuous. I realized, okay, my manager is driving something else. And manager is teaching me something else. Before going for by the hierarchy, before going for the tacit knowledge, just look at the data you have at the first and try to come up with a solution by yourself. I think that's the analytical thinking skill we need any industry in Sri Lanka or globally as well. Because tacit knowledge we need. It's like in Chinese philosophy, yin yang, we need tacit knowledge and gut feeling we need to some extent to make decisions as well. And as organization and experts, we need to figure out how we maintain the right mix between data-driven decision making plus the tacit knowledge-based decision making. So that's in terms of the analytical thinking behavior. And in terms of role, I saw some of the statistics previously as well in senior leadership level. People who understand AI and the technical domain is very limited, very low percentage in terms of leadership layer. I think in any organization, at least there should be at least one person in the senior leadership layer who understand the complexities of the technology. Otherwise, what people do is they purely go by what they see on social media without understanding the complexity behind the work in terms of all the digital solution. Probably who's looking at the information security purely on the cyber security and the data security point of view, and in terms of the data governance point of view, and definitely someone into looking into data democracy and data democratization and data governance piece. So those roles should be definitely there. And in terms of development stage, like those are from the governance point of view, but in the operation level, who can actually do the transformation within the organization teams, that should go the ground level, operation level. Sometime back, people had dedicated roles like data dashboard developers, data analysts. They had dedicated roles. But my personal sentiment now, it should not dedicated to one particular role. Whatever the domain you are heading at the moment, whatever the domain you are following at the moment, there are a lot of tools you can learn by yourself, and you can upskill yourself, and you can do the usual traditional dashboard developers role. Now that role to some extent already taken out by the industry itself. What we are trying to do is we are trying to give that capability for the domain expert. Even though they haven't learned anything from the university, they join the organization, they learn the tools, and they do the develop the dashboard by themselves. And what we had a concept sometime back as well, like build your own dashboard, BYOD, build your own dashboard. So that's a strategy we have started some time back, and still we are continuing that as well. Now again, connected to build and buy. So build is coming under what I explained so far. All the domains, you train them, probably multi-skill and upskill, and you solve your own problems. That's where the data democratization comes, and connected to platforms. That's why data platforms should be there, because now people are doing their own dashboards. Leadership level seeing a different dashboard, and if the operation level seeing another dashboard, then the democratization doesn't happen. So that's why a data platform should be there. Then even though two different dashboards, you are still accessing the same source of truth. And all the KPIs and insights, two different dashboards, but they see the same number. In terms of the buy, there can be a problem, probably in Sri Lankan context. After economic crisis, most of the people started to migrate. I closely work with some of the universities. When I ask them like, okay, all the undergraduates, what's your preference, whether you want to work for a Sri Lankan company or not? Every time they want to migrate to Australia or Canada, that has become a first choice. So significantly, we have a problem in terms of sourcing talent in most of the organizations, specifically in this area. Uh, what we did as an organization, we closely built some of the partnerships with the universities. From second year onwards, we closely work with them, and we train them on apparel industry plus the technology. We gave them the capability. And in University of Moratuwa, what we did was we built a lab inside the university. So while they are learning on the manufacturing process and learning on the machineries, we teach them on the technology as well. So that's where we focused on the buy space, and also we support them on all the research initiatives. Some of the problems we face in the organization, we give it to the undergraduates. Okay, you solve the problem, and it's more like a hackathon concept, and we award the best solution. Most of the time, we recruit the person as well. So that's where we worked on the buy strategy. It's more like a manipulation as well, like in second layer, third year level, like, okay, you don't have to migrate to learn these technologies. You can do the same thing in Sri Lanka as well. So that's how strategy we are driving at the moment.
Thanks, Dehan. And I think another interesting point that came through your views, and I think Kaushik also said it, there's definitely a role for CMAs. And I think fun fact, I'll put it out there. So I was talking to, so we work with a few recruiters. And typically when you tell a recruiter to find people in analytics, data science, they always go, there are certain entities they go behind. But for this one particular role on analytics, I told the recruiter, I want a different viewpoint. So don't go to the typical analytics places, but go to certain business entities, let it be even management accountants, finance professionals, CFAs, because I'd like to have one or two people with that background in my team on analytics, because I want that viewpoint. And I think I personally believe, I think that's definitely a role for CMAs on analytics. So from skills, I want to again go to a topic that is very relevant for management accountants. This came up in the discussion on AI as well. How do you measure value on any analytics initiative? It can be, say, I think Radhika, you are involved in quite a lot of data science work. It can be data science. Or it can be, like what Hasita said, an investment on a data platform project. So how do you look at value? How do you quantify? ROI came up also as a topic. So how do you go about it? And maybe how can a CFO really scrutinize and help get something going? Because sometimes things do get blocked, but I think those both viewpoints are right. Sometimes, as data heads, we push, but right questions are asked, but sometimes there's a stalemate. So how do you really move forward?
Yeah. So before I answer that, I just want to add to what Kaushik was saying about culture. So we work with a lot of companies, outside our group, and usually the business partner, the sales team, or whoever who has the problem is very excited to work with us, want to be data driven, but where things stop, and I think my colleagues from Octave can attest to this in the audience. Usually things get stalled or blocked by the CFO or the management accountant, right? So I hope maybe through this discussion and through your own learning, you'll kind of see things differently and maybe support some of those activities. But one thing where people do, kind of the CFO or the finance side of the house will push back on is, incrementality or looking at the ROI impact of the investment. So this is something actually, so I worked at Meta for about 11 years in the States, and almost every Silicon Valley company, they do a measurement called IREV. It stands for incremental revenue. And any investment, so it could be, starting a new sales team somewhere or building a new product, or coming up with a new process as opposed to old one. Everything has to be justified to IREV, incremental revenue. And that's exactly what we do at John Keys and Octave. So anytime we have a new use case or new project, we first ask the question, what would be the ROI of this project? So let's say you're improving customer satisfaction, or you're trying to increase retention of employees. You still need to put a number behind it and see, okay, if I improve it by 5%, what does it mean financially? And you guys are, no stranger to this concept, right? So trying to put a number behind it and then see what is the cost. So cost can be a lot. Sometimes it can be as simple as investing in Excel, but you still need to quantify and see, okay, the cost of doing this analytical use case is this much. The ROI is huge, right? But so that's why we are doing it. So understanding that even before you run one single line of code is really important. And we do that, in Silicon Valley, we do that at John Keys, at Octave. We always ask that question, what is the ROI? If the ROI is not there, we actually kill the project. We don't move forward, right? So having that rigor and that, being like scientific about it and accurate as possible, and you being part of the finances team can push for this. And if it's really positive and it's going to bring something to the company, then really wholeheartedly support it, right? Give all you got as a management accountant or a CFO to see that through. So I think that's the main kind of learning that I had. And I was surprised that we do that here in Sri Lanka too. And we use a lot of technical methods, which I'm not going to bore you with, but we use experimental design to measure the ROI of a project we start and see through.
Excellent, Razik. And good to hear, local companies also following those practices. Any thoughts from you, Kaushik, on this?
I think I'll go back to some of the comments we made in the last session as well. It's around ROI is good, but it's not enough. And so that's where you break down what you are tracking into input metrics, process metrics, and output metrics. And that way, it's not you're not stuck with just one way of looking at it. For example, if you only look at input metrics, you're most likely going to look at cost, but not really see the value realized. If you look at output metrics alone, then you're looking at value from the point of view of sales, but you don't know how much you're pumping into this project. So you have to look at it as a combined thing. And the process metrics really help you kind of gauge the culture of the organization and culture of the engagement as well. So if you look at it from the context of innovation and you take any data analytics kind of approach to it, if the metric is clear, it becomes a lot easier to figure out what data you're going to need. So the example could be something like kill continue rates, like from last time. So what's the data you need? What are the projects? How many steerco meetings did they have? When did they decide to kill the project? How many meetings did it take to kill that project? How many executives were involved? How much time was spent? These are things that you can collect from meeting minutes. Just feed it into an AI bot and it'll tell you all of this. So it's collecting the data is possible if you know what to look for. From a output lens, adoption rates, for example, how many staff members actually accessed the platform you've given them access to? How many login count? How many reports were actually created? If you ingest your emails into something like Copilot, how many reports were shared? This is all information you can collect now without it being a massive human labor engagement now to collect that information. And you don't have to, sorry to say this, but it doesn't have to always go to the BI team either. It doesn't have to always go to the data analytics team. If you've enabled the business with these tools, then some of this can just sit with them. And so the BI team, the data analytics team actually do things that are a little more structured. And so the ad hoc requests don't have to always go to the data analytics team. So there's different ways to approach this. The baseline is understanding what data is needed based on the outcome.
Thanks, Kaushik. And I think, again, simplicity is coming again as a topic or a theme. I think simple things help you to still monitor effectiveness. Sometimes you don't need very sophisticated techniques. So we covered certain key components, data, platform, skills, and then I think how do we really monitor value? I want to now connect that to the larger theme of the discussion. I think how can we as a country improve? How can different industries improve? I think the best example we can take, so we have two panelists over here from the same industry, two competitors. Maybe taking apparel as an example, Behar and Hasita. If you guys could share some interesting thoughts, how can different organizations within one industry become more data driven? So not just the entities, and maybe probably other players in the value stream as well will become more data driven. And then as an industry, how can we then be more competitive, and which of course results in the country's GDP growing. So if you take apparel as an example, what are your thoughts on how can the industry improve?
Okay, so first of all, I want to add something to the cost factor. So these days, before you are creating a solution, you have to think, right? So I have to go to the shop. So am I going to use my bicycle, my car, or my rocket? This simple thing that we have to take, because using AI, so we can do so many things. But there are so many free options that we have within the purchase application. As example, if you are using Microsoft, Power Automate is there, right? So many things that you can automate, even report generation without using AI, right? So that what I need to highlight. And if I go to the question, so then, so yeah, as an industry, as a company, so in the apparel, so what we can do is that mainly cost reduction things and also the time saving thing on behalf of the report creation as well as the prediction, right? So let's say if we talk about the apparel, so OTD is one of our main KPI. We call it on time delivery, right? So all the things that we are dealing with customers depend on that, right? So what we have done was that recently, right, this OTD meetings we are taking weekly, right? And it takes more than 2 hours, right, in the Friday evening, right? So we do have a dashboard, right? We do have a kind of a data platform we do have, right? But the thing is that information, the way we showing to from the dashboard, is something very kind of a detailed one, right? So one by one we have to go, page by page we have to go. So what we have done was with our director board, we create a very kind of a very summary view, right? Which all the highlighted point, right? Now our OTD meetings only maximum is 1 hour. Most of the time we can complete it by 45 minutes, right? So that's how we can use data, not only showcase the, you mean that the insights and other things, how to save the data, time using the data, right? And other things that we can do is actually, so now with the numbers, right? With the numbers, with the output, so we can create graph, we can do certain things, we can predict all the things. So what about text, the remarks columns, right? If you take the report or something that generated by the humans, right? So we are putting all the data, right? What is the output? What is the outcome? How many defects are there? What is the defect category? So all the things are there. So end of the report, end of most of the report, there is a column called remark. The real story is hiding there. But the thing is that with the graph or something like, we can't tackle this text factor, right? But with AI and with certain advanced method, what we can do is that we can track those things. So simple example is that, so we have department called RMW. We call it raw material warehouse, right? So when we are checking things, so people sometimes they are typing it as a RMW, sometimes raw material warehouse, sometimes RM only, right? Certain things. So when you are tracking those things, when you are seeing this, since this text is different one to one, so we can't track whether this issue is coming from really from RMW, because some graphics shows RM, some graphics shows something else, right? So with using AI and the intelligence, right, what we can do is that we can, there are certain things that we can do, and based on that we can highlight, okay, this chronic issue is coming from the RMW factor, right? Those are the things that we can do with the text data. So apart from that, in the industry, so we have the kind of setup of counselors, right, to discuss the employees' issues and all the things, right? So here we have a huge data set which is recorded by text, and as well as kind of the pattern or the behavior or the culture of the company, right? So you can give kind of a survey and you can check, okay, company is okay or not, certain like thing, the culture is good or not. But the real issues are laying down the employees, comments that they are sharing there, right? So those are the things actually we can do. Apart from that, main thing is the predictive analytics, which call that how we can see the future, right? So since that we are using ERP systems and other systems, so many data points are there that we can check whether, okay, what is the pattern of the particular customer based on the seasons, based on the months, how is the things are happening, right? If the rainy season is there, so how about the performance of the particular factory, right? If the flood is there, is impacting to our employees, right? If the employee is kind of a skill employee, then we have to take precautions, right? Maybe we have to groom our other employees to do a certain operation, certain things. So those are the things that we are using, kind of a very small things that we are using data, and so many things that actually we can do using data analytics and other things as well.
Dehan, any thoughts from you?
Yes. So now apparel is still the biggest industry in Sri Lanka, $5 billion industry. And if we think as a national asset, how we can improve it further. So there are a few use cases. I'll take one use case as a country, how we can grow together. So in Sri Lanka, apparel industry, like $5 billion industry, if you look at the statistics, how the composition goes, majority goes to USA. You all know, like based on Trump's early morning decision, how things gonna change. That's anyway there, that volatility is anyway there. But the second largest, I think, Europe region, sustainability and compliance, probably you have already discussed yesterday as I heard. Now there's a regulation coming in next year. All the products in European region, it has to be tagged. And when the consumers, mostly probably Gen Zs, they are more concerned about sustainability and compliance. And when you scan either QR code or NFC, once you scan the particular product, they should be able to trace all the product details. Sri Lankan apparel industry, as the contract manufacturers, we manufacture those things, and our brands, they are struggling to connect these connectivity because we source from different part of the world, probably China, some in-country source, and our customers like Victoria's Secret and Nike, those are the vendors, and they are struggling how they can survive this compliant requirement. Europe region being one of the most uh, highest number of consumers are there, their highest number of sales coming on there as well. Now, again, this is my personal opinion. Please don't quote MAs anywhere. What I propose as Sri Lanka, how we can do is where we can share data in a common shared platform. If you look at most of the competitors, they have same set of suppliers and same set of customers to provide all the finished goods or the garments. And if you can have a common platform and easily we can pass this compliant requirement, which is definitely coming on next year. Already some of the countries, they have started, like Vietnam, already started to build in those platforms. So governed by the government, I heard some time back, Deputy Minister also mentioned that Sri Lanka is considering bringing data centers to Sri Lanka, connecting to India as well. If that happens, then this might be one of the use case Sri Lankan government can take over. And all the apparel manufacturers, and we have several mills and some of the SMEs also working on that. So they are all onboarded this one single platform. All the data, whatever ERP they are using, whatever the platform they are using, that goes to this shared platform. And all the manufacturers, and not only this is only apparel, whoever doing export business to Europe region, they can access this data, they can use this server, and they can make sure next year onwards their products, whatever the product they do, it's compliant. And the advantage is we can get more business to Sri Lanka. That means all the dollar revenue. Other countries, they are struggling to do this, but Sri Lanka, as an industry, we are working together. And then for all the Victoria's Secret, Nike, they are trying to bring more business to Sri Lanka because we are compliant enough to do more business in Europe region. That's how I think in apparel business, one of the use case we can do. The second component is in terms of the quality, we are popular. Why Sri Lanka is one of the best is purely for the ethical manufacturing plus the quality of the garments we do. And quality again, if we can share data on all the quality defects, because different garments have different defects type and defect categories. At the moment, we don't have a shared common platform in terms of how we can see potential quality defects. There are researches going on, and we also work with Octave as in one of the solution how we can make it more AI driven and eliminating some of the manual interventions as well. In that case, uh, then we share all the quality defects across the industry and everyone gets the benefit. If anyone wants to start their business as a SME, if they want to get into apparel manufacturing, they have already pre-trained data and all the knowledge, MAs and other pioneers and matured companies, they have shared their knowledge, and people who want to get into business, they can learn from the industry giants and they can start their business. I think those two are areas I think we can explore and we can invest money on as well.
Thanks, Dehan, and thanks, Asis, as well. So apparel is an industry that's done very well in the past for Sri Lanka, and I think be more data-driven, using more analytics, more AI, we really hope, two of you leading the show for these larger two entities, we can remain very competitive. Moving away from apparel to Dr. Ravi, I think you mentioned the SME sector, and it's a sector that contributes to more than 50% of our GDP. You did touch on, I think, how the SME sector can get started in a small way. So we do understand that SME sector is also could be part of a larger value chain where the likes of MASs, brandings might exist. What is the role, maybe for larger entities, to help the SME sector, Dr. Ravi, for them to be more data-driven, more analytical-driven? Because we do understand larger private sectors, we at least, not that we've cracked it, but we've taken some steps. But SMEs are left behind. Is there a role for larger corporates, especially where the SMEs reside in their value chain, to play a role? Is there a role for industry bodies to help the SME sector as well?
Yeah, I think SME sector can be our growth engine if we are looking at the growth Sri Lanka need to achieve to pay our debts in the target timelines. I think the role the larger industries could play is to share knowledge because like you correctly said, some of the larger companies in the names of MAs, Brandix, maybe John Keels, have taken certain steps towards this analytics role. So they have knowledge, they have case studies, They have tools which they can share these successful case studies with the SME sector. Or else they could invite a university, a national university, to come and study these cases and publish these cases as national case studies. So the SME sector can go through these cases, study these cases, and learn out of it and do their own experiments. And the um knowledge of data and the technology. Also, some of the large organizations, if they are stakeholders of some of these small organizations, they can share these technologies in order to help the small organizations to prosper. Because one of the challenges the small organizations would have is capital. Their priorities not on data, their priorities on production. So maybe large organizations can hold their hands.
Thanks, Dr. Ravi. I think that's a fitting end to the conversation, touching on what contributes to majority of our GDP. There are a couple of questions that have come, but to be very honest, to do justice to the questions, it's good that we spend about 5 minutes on each, which we don't unfortunately have the time. But what I'd like to do is, if the personnel who raised the question, if they're around, I wouldn't mind, taking one of them up. If some of the panelists are still around, we could always, answer and do the justice to the questions that you have raised. So there are 2 that have come. Please do meet us if you happen to be here. But on that note, I think on the note that Dr. Ravi spoke about on the SME sector, the apparel sector, and I think the national angle, I'd like to conclude the panel discussion and invite Nishan to do a final wrap-up.
Thank you, Yasit. I think a fantastic discussion, and I'm sure you all picked up few ideas, few practical insights, and maybe a couple of questions that you can take back to your organization. So I'll be very quick. Few key themes that consistently emerged. Firstly, where do we actually start in our data journey? Understand how data is created, how it's processed, and how it flows through the organization, which will actually what will build trust, improve quality, and better decisions. Then we looked at what a data platform is, rather than thinking it as a complex technology, to think it as the organization's single source of truth, where data is collected, stored, refined, governed, and made available to power business decisions. Then we reflected on the importance of people, developing the right skills and capabilities, while recognizing that the biggest transformation is often, cultural rather than technological. And especially as management accountants, I think today's discussion showed us that our profession has an extraordinary opportunity, right? So for many years, management accounting, we have been the custodians of financial information, but today there's an opportunity for us to become the custodians of organizational insights. But the question is, are we ready? Are we ready to make the necessary investments so that, when Dr. Radhika comes to your organization, that you won't block the investments? So are we ready, especially for the investments? And finally, one message that stood out clearly at the end is that data-driven organizations, both large and small, create competitive organizations. And competitive organizations will create competitive industries, and competitive industries will actually create a competitive nation. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we will conclude this session. Thank you to our distinguished panelists for sharing their experience as insights. Finally, before we wrap up, to bring today's discussion to life, I would like to share a short video, just 1.5 minute video. Although this is a fictional scenario, it shows how different functions within an organization can leverage data analytics to make faster, smarter decisions. So I think, maybe Are we ready with the video?
Command, I'm getting an alert. It appears we have insufficient inventory to fulfill an incoming order.
Production, what's going on?
We're predicting schedule changes due to unplanned weather conditions.
Analytics?
Forecasts show a storm hitting in 24 hours. Social listening confirms the track, and sensitivity models are predicting asset downtime due to flooding and workforce limitations.
Delays in delivery of raw materials could cause capacity loss of up to 26%.
Production, what can we do?
Running alternative production scenarios now. Our best option is to add capacity at the Northeast plants. An overtime shift would meet demand at positive margin impact. The problem is raw material inventory is too low for additional production.
Supply, if we did go into overtime, is there anything you can do to get the raw materials there in time?
Scanning inventory positions in storage and in transit. I've got raw materials on their way, but 5 days out. Wait. There's material in a warehouse we could get there in 2 days if we ship by air.
We've got clear weather on that route and a 150-knot tailwind, which will save on fuel.
We got raw materials in 2 days. We could make the order on time and stay within margin thresholds.
Exceptions. Can we make this call to go into overtime and divert materials?
Verifying this is within our tolerance to make a decision automatically. Command, we're good to go. No need to escalate to the supply chain planner.
Okay, Digital Supply Network. Let's do it.
Food for thought. But unlike the digital command center, we're going to do the next thing manually and ask our panelists to come back on stage to receive a token, also not digital, of our appreciation.
Okay, so maybe invite Professor Watawala. Again, we have the president of SAFA and Dr. Sugi. So Dinasha will read out the names and they will come up to receive their tokens of appreciation.
Of course. We should start by appreciating our keynote speaker, who unfortunately had to step out due to another commitment, but his contribution, Dr. Ravi Edirisinghe, is much appreciated. We also appreciate our panelists, Dr. Radhika Abevira, Mr. Hasitha Gangodavilla, Mr. Dehan Vitana, our chairperson, Mr. Nishan Mendes, and of course, our moderator, Mr. Yasid Fernando.
So we have a group photograph quickly taken and a quick run through, reading out of our sponsors, because we really appreciate that this whole effort yesterday, the inaugural, today, everything has been supported by these. The platinum sponsors, Lanka IOC, Diesel and Motor Engineering PLC. Gold sponsors, Abans Group, Selinco Life Insurance, then DSI Samson Group, Heycab PLC, Siam City Cement Lanka, then Union Assurance PLC, Silver sponsors OTR Engineered Solutions Lanka, Built Element Limited, and LB Finance PLC, as well as a Rampat group of companies known under another name, Leaf Digital Printing, then to Singer Sri Lanka, SoftLogic Life Insurance PLC. Then we recognize the official telecommunications partner, namely SLT Mobitel, the official payment partner, Dialog Asiata PLC, the official mobile partner, Stafford Motor Company Private Limited, then the National Savings Bank, the business relations partner, and the print media partner, Vijay Newspapers Limited.
We made an attempt to do this earlier, but it's only fitting that we do this at the conclusion of the technical sessions where we've seen the full results of his endeavors. So we'd like to invite on stage to publicly appreciate his efforts in organizing and coordinating these technical sessions. Dr. Sugith Patabandige, please.
Well done, and we really appreciate all of that fine work, and thank you for lingering. We would like to mention that there is some refreshments that have been made ready and served at the lower level, not at this level, but downstairs, and you're cordially invited not only to partake of the refreshments, but it has been gently suggested that networking is also possible.
You can also check out the Hondas in case you want to drive home in one of them.
Unless they've already been driven home. I'm not really sure, but if they're there, there you are. You'll have a look at the special deal available with Stafford Motor Company for CMA members. Take care.
Have a lovely evening.